you. I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the lands of the Anishinaabe, the Cree, the Oji Cree, and the beautiful Dene people, and the beautiful homelands of the Métis Nation. So to start off today, I'd like to acknowledge the Creator for blessing us this day. Bonjour, Knuavik Tishnakaz Namayona Moigan, Migwich Gichimanatu. I'm going to say a little prayer. Ja Winamishin Nom Gom Gagishigak. Jimino Nandana Ga Wendaman. Jimino Wabamang, Nietzsche Anishinaabe. Jimino Nondawag, Nietzsche Anishinaabe. Jimino Gangano Gawag, Nietzsche Anishinaabe. Shago, Jimino Wichiwag Nietzsche Anishinaabe. Miigwich Gizi Manitou. Creator, bless me this day for having good thoughts, to see good things in a person, to hear good words from a person, to talk good talk with a person so that I can walk in a good way with others. Thank you, Creator. Miigwech.
Thank you, Cheryl. All right, we can move on to the next slide here. So we already did this a little bit, but if you want to introduce yourselves in the chat box to let us know where you're joining from, that would be great. You can include your name, where you're joining us from, and your role or position or workplace. I think we can move on to the next one as well. So a little housekeeping before we get started too. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can put them into the chat box. There's also a Q&A button on the bottom of the screen as well, if you want to ask questions confidentially. So we can answer those during the presentation, or we have time at the end to answer questions. So all we ask is that you please listen and be present and respect confidentiality if there's people other than the presenters telling sensitive stories. We're here to grow and learn together and hopefully have a little fun along the way. So if you want to share what you're learning here today on social media, we'd really appreciate that knowledge sharing. You can use the hashtag Safe and Sound Webinar to share information or questions if you have. And by your sharing that, you're helping us spread information, important information about the Sacred Babies Infant Survival Curriculum and the Advocates Report Safe and Sound. As I mentioned before, we will have this recording available on YouTube as well within the next week. So if you want to share that once it's there, by all means, go for it. I'm going to pass things over to Maria, who is our Acting Manager of Research and Quality Assurance at Macy, and she's going to talk a little bit about the Safe and Sound report that spurred this webinar series. Take it away, Maria.
Hi, everyone. Just a quick introduction. In March of this year, as many of you know, I'm seeing some familiar names, so you've participated in the webinar series before. The Manitoba Advocate published a special report that looked back at 10 years of data on sleep-related infant deaths. We found that from 2009 to 2018, 145 infants died, and that 2018 actually had the highest number of infant deaths and the highest rate. So as part of the project, we reviewed public health information across Canada and compared the quality of that information that was provided to caregivers, as well as policies in health and child welfare. And we are happy to share in our report that we have this excellent resource here made in Manitoba and available and culturally safe resource called Sacred Babies, which was developed by the First Nations Health and Social Secretariat. It is not only evidence-based, but it is also culturally safe. And this is why we're really honored today to be hosting two individuals from the First Nations Health and Social Secretariat who have also advised on our report and project. Next slide. The first is Rhonda Campbell. She is the Nurse Program Advisor since 2014 and has worked in First Nations communities for over 20 years. She's a band member of the Pine Creek First Nation Treaty 4 territory. Welcome, Rhonda. And we also have Elizabeth DeClaire. and she is a registered nurse and a band member from Cross Lake, Manitoba, located 770 kilometers north of Winnipeg. Again, we want to thank them for sharing their expertise with us, not only today, but throughout the development of the report. We could not have done it without them. So without further ado, I will let them introduce the webinar. Thank you.
Hi, can we get the next slide, please? Hi, Rhonda Campbell, Dishnikas, Minagozi B, Donji. So today we are very pleased to be part of this webinar series with Children's Advocate. We do a lot of work on safe sleep and preventing deaths that occur in children and infants in First Nations community through our home visiting program. So I just want to quickly review our outline. Both Liz and I will be speaking on our curriculum. So a little bit of our introduction, which we're doing now. We have some acknowledgements, the importance of this topic, our goals, the survival guide, what our elders have shared with us that have been a huge part in the making of this curriculum. SIDS 101, just some basic information. And I'd like to add that when this was created, the terminology was SIDS, Sudden Infant Death Syndrome, but over the last few years, that language has changed, and we're now using sudden unexplained infant death. So SUDID is is a term now that we use when discussing infant deaths related to unexplainable causes. And then Liz will review the curriculum organization. We'll share our references and linkages. And if you have any questions or comments, you can also, I don't know how that works, you can stop us or raise your hand if you have a question, or we can just leave it towards the end. So next slide. Okay, so like I said, this curriculum was created as part of a safe sleep campaign that began in, I believe, 2012-13. And you'll see we have some posters that reflected the factors that contributed to SUDID, such as smoking, positioning, and temperature. So we'll have those. And then came along, there was a number of people involved. Initially, Michelle Tully was a former MCH clinical resource specialist, and she had done a lot of the work. I had done some of the research in the material. Late Daryl Phillips was the project manager. Wanda Phillips-Beck was the maternal child health nurse program advisor at that time. Cree Nations Tribal Health Authority was the community partner, and First Nations Health Branch was the project funder, and West Coast Kids was a private sector sponsor. Next slide. Okay, so we had, we always try to, why is this topic important? Because a lot of people, I think, we forget there's a number of our babies that are dying prematurely from preventable causes. And we know that our First Nation babies die at 2 to 3 times higher rates than non-First Nation babies across Canada. And these this infant mortality rates are really an important indicator of the population or a subpopulation, and that is, the disparities we see in our First Nation or Indigenous communities. Some of these deaths can be attributed to congenital anomalies, which are defects at birth, low birth weight babies, babies that are born prematurely, and of course, sometimes respiratory illnesses and injuries all contribute to this high infant mortality rate. So some of these causes are unknown, and I talked about SIDS are suited at the time. So it does rank number 3 for First Nation families in Manitoba and may be consistent or even higher across other First Nations in Canada. Next slide. And this is a slide that was given to me by Dr. Lynn Warda. I don't know if she's on today. And then it just demonstrates the different rates of infant mortality across the provinces and territories. And if we look across Canada, that it is 4.5 per thousand. And if we look at the Manitoba rate, it is 5.4, so it is higher. And if you compare to the other ones, we see that Saskatchewan may be a little bit higher, and none of it has the highest rate of 11.2. And when in the Manitoba one, you see the number 11.5 in parentheses, that's the Northern Health Region in Manitoba. So you can see it's, twice, 2 times higher compared to the whole province. Next slide. And this is an older slide, and we've been using this one, and as I couldn't really find information is always behind. And when they looked at First Nations comparing the Canadian general population, Manitoba, First Nations on reserve and First Nations off reserve, and we can see almost consistently that First Nations on reserve have had a higher rate of suited, in the last, well, this is 2005, but I'm sure based on, data that we will, updated versions, we'll see that that's still continuing on. Next slide. And so when all this information was came to light, almost 10 years ago, when Wanda Phillips-Beck was the nurse program advisor, and our work with the Chief Medical Examiner's Office, and really highlighted that we were seeing a lot of our First Nations babies dying sooner, and some of it was preventable. So really, we wanted to help reduce the number of potentially preventable deaths by sharing this information widely with families. And there was print material, radio, video, and also home visits with the home visiting program, and reaching those families as early as possible during pregnancy or shortly after having their babies. And this curriculum was to provide training to community-based staff in all the children's programs, like the Aboriginal Head Start, if they have a daycare component with infants less than a year old, on safe sleep, and also working with other Canadian prenatal nutrition program and the other children's programs in the community. Next slide. So this was one of the posters, and its theme was, again, looking at temperature. So kind of if you're over bundling the baby, that can contribute to unsafe sleep. So this is what this message that was sent out. And we still have some posters, I believe. Next. And this one, of course, was smoking. That link between smoking in the prenatal period and also around the baby. And of course, the baby's on the side, and you'll see that's risk factor. But again, this was created to send that message. Next one. So I think, Liz, are you going to be taking over this part?
Not yet.
Okay.
This will tell you, yeah. That's okay.
All right. So so this all came together. Creation of this curriculum is a family-centered, includes all the fathers, grandparents, aunties, a educational program with the aim of providing families with information on how to keep their babies safe during that first year of life and beyond. And as I said before, it was developed with the Strengthening Families Maternal Child Health Program, Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, Prenatal Tribal Council, and Little Black Bear and Associates, and funded by First Nations and Inuit Health Branch Health Canada. Next slide. And when we spoke to our elders and our knowledge keepers that helped us to guide this work, these are some of the beliefs. Our elders and teachers of the past taught us that all children are sacred gifts of the Creator. The infant sits very near to the elder in the cycle of life and remain closely connected to the spiritual world. As infants remain very close to the spiritual world, they remain very vulnerable and require special care and nurturing until they're able to care for themselves. We as caregivers, teachers, elders, educators, communities all have a role to play in helping our young ones to walk safely, walk long, thrive well, and flourish in their journey to adulthood. So this is quite beautiful and very powerful words of wisdom from our knowledge keepers. So I think that helps us frame our work and it's so critical. Next slide. And just to briefly run through this, I know a lot of you have this information, but some of you may be new. And again, we used the word SIDS when we created this. It's just kind of 101 that we do, but as we're working on a newer version, we'll update it with the new terminology that's suited. So what is SIDS? Or suited as sudden and unexplained death of an infant under the year of 1, which is unexplained after a thorough case investigation, after performance of a complete autopsy, examination of the death scene, and review of the infant's and family's clinical history. So all of that is taken into account, and the term was, they couldn't explain what caused this infant's death at that time. So a lot of times it's just termed SIDS. But as that knowledge increase and there's risk factors we'll review, you'll see that now it's the terminology change in sudden unexplained infant death. And but it is called one of the leading or top cause, but it's actually not a cause. It's just a death, that baby with no identifiable cause. And we can't always identify for sure 100% which infants will succumb to that. We do know with the research, there are some risk factors as well as protective factors. And we do have that power to change some of those risk factors. Next slide. So in looking at the literature, a huge one that was discovered in the 90s, early 90s, was that prone sleeping position. So placing baby on the stomach, and we do say side there, but it's really on the tummy. And that had huge implications, where almost 50% reduction in infant deaths when the campaign was, putting baby back to sleep. I talked a little bit about preterm, premature babies, or babies with low birth weight, being a risk factor, slower than normal growth for a baby, so kind of that baby that's like a failure to thrive. And we'll see surfaces has been linked to infant deaths, sleeping on a soft mattress or surface. And again, temperature, if the baby overheats, link between smoking or drug use during pregnancy. There's also some clear evidence around socioeconomic disadvantage, as poverty, income, education all play into that. Another sleeping area is that cluttered sleeping area. And for years, we were like, decorate the crib. And we even did a campaign on, or a poster, like, decorate the room, but not the crib, because we know all that plays into unsafe sleep. And we say First Nations heritage because of some of those disadvantages that we live in. And we do have that, as I showed in the earlier slides, of twice that. And a lot of it is related to not having that safe space. Sometimes it's lack of awareness. And really, if we look back into that disruption of our traditional ways of parenting our children. And also there's a link, risk factor of being male. And I think, I can't remember the exact reason why that was. I have to look it up again. So next slide. And again, looking at sharing a bed with a baby, we see sharing again with another child. So again, somebody can roll over onto the baby and they can get smothered or trapped in against a wall. Smoking, we know that smoking affects, the respiratory system. Family history, if the child has had someone in their family die unsuited. Again, being a young mother without those supports and knowledge and unable to afford things might contribute to that as well. A huge one is late or no prenatal care during pregnancy, has been linked to again, the infant deaths. One of the medical things is a child needing some resuscitation because their breathing has stopped. So sometimes during either their birth or within that first few months, a low APGAR score, and an APGAR score is just looking at the baby's overall condition, and usually taking that a minute after the baby's born or 5 minutes, looking at their color, breathing, heart rate. So if they're having difficulty, then they may have difficulty regulating their breathing and their heart rate, and so later on down the road. Next slide. Okay.
So this is my part now, Rhonda.
So,
Sorry.
go ahead, Liz.
Okay, sorry about that. There was 2 slides there that said infant survival guide. So I'm going to just talk about the curriculum. Thanks for joining us. My name is Elizabeth DeCare, and the curriculum was developed as an easy to flow curriculum. It's fully scripted. It guides a discussion with families during a 1 or 2 session. It includes within the manual interactive learning activities, examples of that, and you'll see as I talk a little bit further, our safety checklist that families can do with parents, as well as looking at alternative sleep areas if a family does not have the means of providing a crib. So there's some examples of those learning activities. The facilitator's guide was developed so that the material and the curriculum can be self-taught. So at the beginning of the manual, we do have a 1-page welcoming to either the educator or our home visitors, and how to utilize the manual appropriately. The manual itself is 27 pages and very high gloss, so that the educator is able to write notes and then possibly erase if need be, depending on the situation that they're sharing this information and the group that they're sharing it with. The manual also includes a 10-minute CD video with personal stories and with panel expert interviews. Next slide, please. So you see that that's the front of our manual. Every manual looks like this. It's a 1-inch binder. And next slide. And within it, we have that CD included in every manual, as well as the information that would be shared during a 1 or 2 session. Next slide. So the curriculum is organized into 2 parts. Again, that's the facilitator manual that you just saw in the last 2 pictures. And we also have a parent booklet, which you will see a picture on, a picture at the end. That's actually stays with the parent after the information has been shared. The curriculum was developed to be delivered again prenatally or to postpartum families. It's again to be presented during either a home visit with a family or with discussion amongst a group. Next slide, please. So the information was developed to be delivered over a 1 to 2 home visits, again, one-on-one with families or in a group session. The information is written in Times New Roman font, so it's easily readable and is considered a script. So there is nothing that the home visitor or the educator needs to add to it unless they need to themselves. The information is written, there's italic information within the binder, and that is for the facilitator to have consider direction or suggestions for the facilitator to direct the conversation amongst the participants. Next slide. So again, our curriculum manual, the binder at the beginning of my talk there, is that it's divided into 9 sections. Each is designed to build on the information from the previous section. However, based on the facilitator's awareness of the group, they might start at a specific section depending on the need of the attendees. So if there's a need to understand some more tummy time information, they might start at that right away. So these are the 9 sections, and the first section is our introduction to SIDS. The second is the SIDS facts and definition. The third is a sleep position. Our fourth is the crib safety. 5 is tummy time, 6 is smoking, 7 is bed sharing, 8 is breast is best, and 9 is a summary of the manual and the important notes within the manual to share. Next, please. So within the curriculum, we have bookmarks, and they are identified throughout the 9 sections. There are repetitive themes that the facilitator can identify, and the bookmarks identify and alert the presenter to something special about that information. So again, there's 5 bookmarks within the curriculum. Those include the elders teaching, and that is actually a feather. Our next slide will show what that is. And if you want, you could just go to the next slide. So you can see that our elders teaching is the feather with the dream catcher. The reference is a reference to a booklet of information that may have been utilized to develop the manual information. And then you can see an icon for research, so that alerts the facilitator to identify that this information comes from research. Then we also have the person with their arms raised as a reflection. So this alerts the facilitator to allow the participant to reflect back and look back on the information. So it gives them that opportunity to know that the participant is understanding the information that they're being taught. And then you see the time clock, that's a pause and listen. So these bookmarks are identified throughout the curriculum. And that is, again, to alert the presenter to something special about the information within the manual. Next, please. So again, we also include the Sacred Babies Infant Survival Parent Booklet. So that is something that goes with the parent after they've been after they've participated in the manual information. So that the parent booklet is to be utilized in conjunction with the curriculum manual. It's also easy to follow. It's condensed information from of the teaching sheets and posters used in the curriculum. The bookmark link and chains are used in the curriculum to direct the family to the corresponding page and teaching sheets in the booklet, as well as their certificate of the curriculum completion is located on the last page of the parent booklet, which can be filled out when the resource is completed with the family or at the end of the group presentation. The booklet is considered a keepsake with the hope that the family will share that information with others as well. Next page, please. And that is the parent booklet picture of that follows along with the curriculum, again with the condensed version. And we do supply these as well as they are included with the manuals. Next, please. So this, we just pulled some information from our manuals to show you that we do, you can see at the left top corner, you see the bookmark for the research. So we do identify to the facilitator within the manual that this is information that has come from research. And we show pictures and provide an opportunity for the facilitator to read that information and then be able to present it back to the participants the way that they might need to, depending on the level of understanding as well. So again, as I mentioned, the pages within our manual are the facilitator is able to write on this page that you would see in front of you right now and be able to mark any notes that they might need to come back to at a later time. That was pulled from our manual, and that is the symbol to the left, top left. Next, please. This as well from the learning activities that I spoke to. This would be the crib safety, and we provide that information again within our manual and our parent handbook, just about the importance of the measurements of crib safety. We also include a checklist, and if you can go to the next slide. So this would be a checklist taken both out of the manual, and you can see within it also states that it's page 5 in the parent handbook, so that this information again can stay with the family, and when they do, they might know of others who have babies on the way, or can share this information so that they are able to utilize this safety checklist. So again, this would be a learning activity that the facilitator might go through, or with the participants if they're doing a one-on-one, or go through this as a group. And at some point, if it is one-on-one, they might actually directly go into the room where the crib is and go through that safety checklist with the participant. So again, that page 5 is in, it is also in the parent handbook. So we know that the parents do have that information with them when we do leave the house with the manual. Next slide, please. This is a picture that we added into the curriculum as well. It's a picture of a traditional swing. We know that some of our communities utilize their swings to for as alternate sleep areas if there is no room for a crib, as well as we know that these do exist in our communities still and are utilized quite a bit. So on this picture actually is just to identify what a swing, this safety of swing sleep alternative, as well as what might be wrong with this picture. For example, this picture does not show that there should be, at each end of the rope, there should be a stick, a wood stick, separating the swing itself so that the baby would have, wouldn't be squished into the swing and covered like a burrito, I guess. But this is just an example of within our curriculum where we identify utilizing those traditional swings, how they could practice safe sleep with them. Next slide, please. This is just a picture from our curriculum as well, and we talk about tummy time. It's again, it's one of the sections from the 9 sections within our manual, so there's quite a bit of information about tummy time. We just thought this is a cute picture to share with everyone. One of our participants, one of our staff within our own maternal child health program, this was her little girl, so she allowed us to share this amongst everyone. Next slide. So again, this is another part of the curriculum that we review as a learning activity as well, and we share within the parent handbook on alternative safe sleep surfaces. So if there is no access to a crib, then these are options that may be considered for the safety of the child. Next, please. So again, one of our sections within our curriculum manual is breast is best, and we focus and talk about breastfeeding and the benefits of breastfeeding, as well as the teachings and I think we end off with that actually with our breast is best within our manual. Yes, so we take a bit of information, or we speak about a lot of that information in there, and share some elder teachings as well. So those are just snippets of our manual. There is more, and a lot of beautiful art and pictures within our manual. So our little presentation here doesn't give it justice as much as I'd like it to, but it's very well received and very well laid out and very easily able for the facilitators to facilitate this information on a difficult subject sometimes for our communities. So I think the next slide, Rhonda will speak to. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Okay, so these are just some of the additional resources that we have in the manual. So if people want to take a further look, they can look them up themselves. And this was at the time when the literature was done. Next slide. And so at the Strengthening Families Maternal Child Health, myself, Liz, and Joyce Wilson. So if anybody needs to contact us more about our program or our training. But if there are people interested in the 2-day training, they can contact Wanda Phillips Beck. I think the slide wasn't updated as we put Wanda Phillips Beck's name here as a contact person for Little Black Bear and Associates. So yeah, so that concludes our presentation. So if there are any questions or comments, we'd be happy to best help to answer.
Thank you so much, Rhonda and Liz. Anyone who has a question can put it in the chat there or the Q&A section. I just put the First Nations Health and Social Secretariat Manitoba website link in the chat as well. And I will put our advocate website there too. If you do have more questions later or want more information from either of us, those are good places to go. I'm not seeing any questions just yet. Oh, spoke too soon. After the 2-day training, we can do a training using this manual. Romina is asking. Rhonda or Liz, do you want to field that?
Yes, so if when the people take the training, they get certified and can use the manual. And like I say, if you're not in a First Nations community in any of the children's programs, we do the training. However, if you're out, then we request a training, then I would direct you to Little Black Bear and Associates.
There's another question in the chat from Melanie. I heard you mention that this can be offered to persons known to be expecting. Do they have community groups weekly or monthly?
Hi, I guess it depends on the community. I know we have a couple of our staff here that are also listening in. So I do believe they will share the information depending on the supervisor or the coordinator in the community. Does have like either as a health promotion activity and depending on their schedule.
Okay. There's a question in the Q&A section here saying, just wondering about the Angel Care Monitor. Have you heard if this reduces SIDS?
Sorry, Angel Care Monitor?
Angel Care Monitor. Have you heard if this reduces SIDS?
I think sometimes that question comes up about using these devices or monitoring. We don't have a lot of evidence on that. So we don't usually recommend it when we're doing our training. for that, because we can't really, and if it's not supported by Health Canada, then we would say that we can't really make that claim.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions. Oh, hi, Matt. Can the infant room safety checklist be used by CFS workers performing home visits?
I think if they have the training and using it, that would be a great idea, because, and it can also not be just used with kind of the crib. It's whatever sort of safe, kind of like a safe sleeping area. So, you know, changing it, you know, not everybody has a crib and the baby have their same room, but I know there's standards with Child and Family Services. So yeah, just ensuring using that safety list, making sure all those measures are in place would be a great idea. Yeah,
Another question here from Arlene. So once the baby can turn over from back to tummy, is the baby safe in terms of sleeping?
I think the literature, and Dr. Warda, if she's still on, can help me answer that one. You don't have to keep putting the baby back on their tummy. It's really when the baby can't, you know, in the first few months, you know, leaving on their tummy to sleep, and they can't kind of turn their head, and, you know, they can suffocate with their head down, face down onto the mattress or wherever. So yeah, so if Dr. Warda wants to help me out here, be great.
Yeah, am I off mute?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, was the question how long or the reason why? I missed that. Or both.
It says, so once the baby can turn over from back to tummy, is the baby safe?
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's really when they can roll from in all directions and that they're doing it well. And when they start to flip over, which is really much later when they're more mobile in the first year of life, then you don't have to keep going back in and turning them, you know, back onto their back. And really the peak for these infant deaths is around 16 weeks of age, or around 4 months, which is right around the time when babies are learning how to roll front to back and back to front. And so that is actually the riskiest time then and before. So when they really can't lift their head properly, when they're in the tummy position, when they're lying on their tummies, that's when, especially when you combine that with soft bedding and overheating, that, you know, these multiple factors come together to result in them having difficulty breathing, basically.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. And for those who aren't aware, Lynn, thank you for attending all of our webinars and fielding questions. For Lynn Warda works in pediatrics and public health at the WRHA. So we appreciate you being here. There's one more question in the Q&A section. I have had a family use a cradle board to put the baby to sleep. Is this considered a safe sleep option?
That's a very good question, which sometimes we struggle with. And that's where usually we bring in our knowledge keepers. And because in the community, the grandmothers, the elders knew how to keep the baby safe within that cradle board or that tikanagan, and they had safety features. Some of the cradle boards today may not have those features, and so we always get the encourage them to, you know, speak to their elders and knowledge keepers in the community. And yeah, that's one of the questions while we're doing our training that comes up, is the use of cradle boards, swaddling, and the swings, And what's the other one? Oh, smudging. Smudging. So we get a lot of those questions, but again, we always seek the input of our elders. But we also want to make sure that that baby is safe and what the evidence shows as well.
There's another question about a safe sleep surface in the chat here.
Is the car seat safe for an infant to sleep on at home? Definitely not. I think that's a good question as well, and one that's always raised because when babies are at that critical time, and Dr. Ward had mentioned those early months, how their neck can't really support them to keep their head back and move it back, but sometimes their head will come forward and they can asphyxiate. So we discourage them from sleeping in a swing, car seat, of that sort.
Okay. Good. Last call for questions. And again, if you have more later, you can reach out to any of us. If you want to put those that email slide back up in our printer, folks can reach out to you there or to us through our website, manitobaadvocate.ca. Thank you everyone again for joining us. Oh, there's one more. What's your advice for drivers who travel long distances with babies for visits?
What's our advice for families that are driving long distances with babies?
Yeah.
That's a very good question. I don't think we've ever been asked that one. And again, Dr. Warder, I would welcome, but I think, there's feeding for a baby during that trip. And because we always want, safety is paramount. You want that baby in that, baby has to be in the car seat facing backwards at that age and weight. And I have seen, where they have those supports to keep the head sort of in a neutral position. But it's kind of like, how often is your baby going to feed? Is every 2 hours for a 10-hour trip down on the highway and stopping and ensuring. But again, of course, that baby's 2 months old and, they sleep a lot. So they're going to be in that car seat. So very good question, Dr. Porter. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I don't know where they came up with this, but some people use, including Transport Canada, 2 hours, which again fits with the feeding schedule, kind of makes sense. Take the baby so stop the car, take the baby out of their car seat, let them stretch, feed them, change them, etc. So it's basically 2 hours, but also you would like, if possible, for an adult to be in the back seat beside the baby to keep an eye on them. Sometimes what can happen in the rear-facing car seats, well, other car seats too, is that, again, their heads can flex forward and can obstruct their breathing a little bit. So making sure that their head is in a good position, sort of facing forward, or kind of, we call it the sniffing position, like they're kind of sniffing the air. You don't want their neck, their chin down to their chest, which can happen very easily, especially with the youngest babies. And of course, yeah, the car seat rear facing, properly installed, baby buckled into the car seat. Lots of things to remember, but not overly bundled either. So if you're in the car, you probably have the heat on if it's in the winter. So the baby can just be in, a light sleeper and then maybe one more layer, but not like a puffy snowsuit or anything, because that can interfere with the how well they stay in. Even though they're strapped in with the harness, it can actually create space
with the puffiness of outerwear. And so you have to be able to cinch it, quite snugly towards their body. So they don't need to be all bundled up when they're in the car for that long period of time.
Thank you for that.
Okay, I think we can wrap it up here. Thank you again, everyone, for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day and awesome weekend ahead. Thanks.
Linkage, everyone.
Thank you.